Good morning. Good morning, you sexy human being. I know that you're sexy because you're watching this, and that tells me that you're at least on some level a preparedness-minded human being, and prepared human beings are sexy human beings. And yes, you know I'm talking about you, Captain Quest. That tanned, beautiful body of yours. Good morning. Welcome to the SitRep. And today is, what is it, the 16th of June, 2022. It is currently 26 minutes past 10 a.m. on the Australian Eastern Standard Time on that seaboard on the east. How you all doing? What's going on? Cameras are a bit disjointed today. Let me just stuff things around. Boats make you attractive. Well, you are a boat man, Captain Quest. Everyone knows this. It is known coffee is good. Also, all right. Yeah, how you all doing? I hope you're all well on this Thursday. I hope things are going good for you, and I hope you are getting all your ducks in a row and continuing to prep every single day. Getting on it, doing the little things, the little steps, the 1%ers each day, just getting yourself a little bit more prepared. Remember, this whole preparedness shenanigans, it's not a sprint. This is not a sprint. What we're heading into in the world right now is, again, not a sprint. It's not about the big push effort and getting through, a day, a week, or even a month. This is a marathon. This is something that's going to take time. And we should think about preparedness from that perspective as well, that we just do the little things. We make ourselves a little bit more prepared. I do a little bit of a workout today. I make myself a little bit fitter. I chop a little bit of wood today. What else am I going to do today? I'm going to test out some equipment and shoot some videos on it for you guys today. But it's just little things. Oh, I'm getting delivery of new stuff today as well. Yes. It's exciting. It's like Christmas. And I've got a whole heap of new books too. I don't have them all here. I'm like totally disorganized today. I'm talking about organization with preparation and stuff like that. And I'm an utter shit fight here. New books I've like that. And I'm an utter shit fight here. New books I've got here. I know this is all backwards. I apologize. This is The Rugged Life from Clint Emerson, who's a former Navy SEAL. And if you don't know the old trope that Navy SEALs get into being a Navy SEAL in order to write a book and or be in a movie, that's exactly what they do. Anyway, Clint Emerson's got a number of books, and I own pretty much all of them. Really good information that he puts out there. 100 Deadly Skills was his first. Really good information that he puts out there. 100 Deadly Skills was his first book. Highly recommend it. Follow him as well on Instagram. He puts out some really cool stuff. I had to get another copy of this because I lost my last copy. The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you go out and read this book. Get this book, read this book. All right, it's probably one of my number one recommendations for books. What else we got here? Probably my second most recommended book is this one here, The Knowledge by Lewis Dartnell. It's like show and tell this morning. Wow. Another book that I recommend if you want to get deeper into how to spot threats in the space around you and threat spaces and things like that is Left of Bang by Patrick Van Horn and Jason A. Riley. If you want, I can send you a list of these. This is just an interesting one, On Killing by Grossman, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. On Killing, classic. And then I've got some disaster books that I'm about to dive into. I haven't read these ones yet, but I'm looking forward to it. This first one is called The First 72 Hours, A Community Approach to Disaster Preparedness by Margaret O'Leary. Yep, Margaret O'Leary. This next one, Measuring Disaster Preparedness. I'm really interested about this one, about how we can actually measure disaster preparedness. It's such an intangible thing to me. So I saw that. And that again is by Margaret O'Leary. So I'm digging her books at the moment. Hopefully she's a good writer. And good old Arthur T. Bradley, PhD, The Disaster Preparedness Handbook, a guide for families. Interesting. So I do have some other books that I also got recently. I just don't know what I've done with them. So many books, but the library is growing. Anyway, let's get on with what you came here for, which is the stories that are tinkering on around our world right now. Will there be links somewhere, or I must leave here to follow them? I'll put a post up. I'll put a post up. It'll be in my feed in maybe 10, 15 minutes after this. After I finish this, I'll do it to all those books that I just showed you. And I'm working on doing like some sort of affiliate link thing. I've got one person in particular who keeps reminding me like, hey man, like you can do this and maybe get some money, and you can put out these sort of like Patreon accounts and newsmail lists and things like that, newsletter lists and stuff, and affiliation accounts and things like that. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm not really like in the money-making mind with this. This is just more of a community service. But anyway, I'm not going to stop these. Don't worry about that. Let's jump into the stories today. Let's start over in Russia. Again, I like to always throw you a little bit of Russian propaganda in there for you because you might not be getting it. Russia apparently made $98 billion in fuel exports in the first 100 days of the Ukraine conflict. So again, quite the opposite to what we've been told about what's happening with Russia and the situation there, that they're financially crippled and the West is almost winning. That we're getting reports, I mean, this is coming out of Russia, so take that for what it is, but reports that they are actually like making money. They're making bank over there at the moment. So again, sanctions, are they working? China and Russia, apparently Putin and Xi Jinping had a bit of a phone conversation overnight, and they've had that sort of phone conversation, shaking of hands, and said we're still tight, and come out saying essentially that. However, I will say I read some of the releases that came from the Chinese side, and I still find it very ambiguous when they're saying things. You can see that they are still supporting Russia. There's still some sort of like link there. And from the West side, they're like, oh yeah, totally China's supporting them. But China's also kind of hedging their bets. You know, they're not saying anything like, yes, we 100% Russia, saying anything like, yes, we 100% Russia, 100% back Russia to move into the Ukraine and take over there. They just say things like, what are they saying here? Each of the parties concerned should take a responsible position, contributing to the proper resolution of the crisis in Ukraine. China is ready to continue playing its constructive role. What does that mean? So again, you know, sort of like this ambiguous sort of stuff. What's this constructive role? I mean, really, you could take that on either side. You could say, oh, China's constructive role is to help bring an end to the conflict. Is that what they're doing? China's constructive role is to help Russia out. You know, what are they actually saying there? Not much in reality. But again, we're seeing the strengthening of ties between China and Russia. Let's talk about Turkey for a second. We've got a bit of a Turkish problem here. Turkey's they're swinging punches left, right, and center. Obviously, they're making some pretty big overtures towards moving into northern Syria now. They've hinted at some other areas as well, maybe even like northern Iraq area. There was some sort of talk about that. But who's really concerned about Turkey is Greece at the moment. So the Turkish armed forces began to deploy S-400 air defense systems in Izmir, which increases their ability to, I guess, defend their airspace in a certain area. And that certain area now includes a lot of Greece. And so Greece is quite worried. In fact, the release from Greece, Greek media have come out and pointed out that a war with Turkey is now inevitable. they're saying that they are going to war with Turkey. Again, like, this is what people are saying, not what they're doing necessarily, but there is a lot of tension between these two countries right now, and it only seems to be increasing. More going on than just the Ukraine, more going on than just increasing. More going on than just the Ukraine, more going on than just Taiwan. But this area as well is quite a hot spot. We've also got Israel and Iran pushing further and further into what seems to be a hot war. And there was some report. I don't really read a lot about what the Pope says because I'm not Christian. I don't give that much of a shit about it, but what he has to say in particular. But there's a report that came out that he said that the world is now in World War III. And so, that's something we need to start factoring in. And I've said this for a while. I think we'll actually look back at this point here in time and go like, oh, I think we were in a de facto state of World War III at this point here. But time will tell. I've been wrong in the past once. North Korea. North Korea is to hold nuclear tests at any time. North Korea is currently prepared to conduct a nuclear test at any time, with Chairman Kim Jong-un when Kim Jong-un decides to do so. This was from an anonymous source talking to Yonhap. Not sure what Yonhap is, but a news agency in South Korea, I think. Possibly. I could be totally wrong there. North Korea has conducted about 6 nuclear tests. The last one was in September 2017. So it's been about 5 years, almost 5 years since they've done one. Is it the end of the world if they do another one? No. But does it show us where we are in this sort of cycle of high tensions and war at the moment? Yes, I think it does. The fact that they're doing this now really starts to show that this area of the world, the Korean Peninsula, is also another hotspot. So I just named, what do we got through? Ukraine, Russia, Europe sort of area. We've got Turkey, Greece. We've got Iran and Israel. We've got China, Taiwan, and we've got the Korean Peninsula there now also kicking off. There's a whole heap of other things too that are going on in the world. And I didn't actually go, there's a couple other stories, Burkina Faso and different places throughout Africa, which are starting to have increased violence in there. I should report on them. I should talk about them, but I'm just not going to. But just again, I want you to see that there is more going on than just Ukraine. There's more going on than gas prices right now. There's a whole heap of tension that's going on in the world. It's not something that we need to be overly worried about right now, as in fretting about and biting our fingernails off. It's just something I believe we need to keep our eye on and keep watching these things develop, because this can conflagrate into is that even a word? Conflagrate. This could conflagrate into a much, much larger and overt conflict, i.e. WWIII. It's World War III, for those who couldn't figure out my spelling. All right, let's come back into Australia now. What's happening in Australia? The spot market for wholesale electricity. So just a little reminder for everyone what's happening with the electricity here in Australia. We're having problems. We've got problems. They put a price cap on it and they said, hey, you electricity, operators, you can only charge this much for electricity, which I think is just a terrible idea whenever we're capping prices on things. It's this kind of it's this idea that, and there is some truth to it, I will admit that. This idea that just greedy capitalists are sitting there going, oh, we can make more money right now. Without actually paying attention to all the factors that feed into anything that we actually consume nowadays. Anything that we consume, anything that we have, has a number of things leading into it. And if there's disruptions or something that affects the prices in any one of these things or several of these things, then it obviously affects the price of the end thing that we consume. In this case, it's electricity. So then just saying like, oh, you electricity companies, bang, this is the only amount that you can afford. Well, at some point in this example, electricity companies go, well, like, that doesn't make sense to us. If you're only going to let us charge X amount for it, and yet it costs us X plus 3, then we lose money every time we're doing it. So we have to make the money somewhere else. So we're just going to curtail the amount of electricity we put out. And that's what we're, roughly speaking, that's one of the factors that why we're having electricity problems in Australia at the moment. It's not like we've started consuming a lot more all of a sudden. It's not like plants have blown up or anything. It's just actual costs. It's economic pressures that are happening here. And then artificially, how would you put this? Artificially created pressures are happening here. And that's what we're seeing the result of. Eclipsed Echidna says electricity costs spiked past $1,000, but they were only able to charge $300. No wonder they said no to that. Exactly right. Like, what company can operate for any period of time at a loss? Only one that I know of. It's called the government. They're the only one that can continue to operate at a loss because they can then squeeze the human beings within their own country to fill the gaps that they have. And it doesn't really matter if they run it at a loss at the end. In reality, I mean, it does matter after a long enough time, i.e. look at what's happening in Sri Lanka right now. But they can kind of bear that brunt of losses year after year if they need to. A company, though, cannot. So yeah, if you're saying like it costs a company $1,000 to get X, like a unit of electricity out there, and yet they can only charge the public $300 or charge the wholesalers $300. Hey, I'm no genius at maths, but that don't add up, right? That just does not add up. Anyway, so the latest thing in this Australian thing, the spot market for wholesale electricity across Australia and eastern states has been suspended amid an ongoing energy crisis. So spot market, similar to gold or silver, where we say, like, here's what the price is, and that's made from a number of factors. In different markets, it's different factors. They just sort of said, no, just stop it. Just no. We just got to shut down this moving needle at the moment. Uncanny again that I'm reading Atlas Shrugged and I'm just seeing what was written in the 50s in Atlas Shrugged play out in our society right now in Australia. Insanity. All right, let's jump over to the US of A now and what's happening over there, or some of the stuff that's happening over there. President Biden warns oil company executives to produce more oil or government will take emergency actions. CEO responds saying they've provided 10 policy actions that can be taken now to alleviate pain at the pump. Again, this is straight out of the pages of Atlas Shrugged. You've got a government saying, we need more. Like, there's a problem here. Just give us more oil now. Make more oil. Give us more. You have to, or we're going to do something emergency stuff, and we're going to make you give it to us. And the company's coming back and saying, hey, look, here's 10 ideas. I'll give you 10 ideas on how to do this. I.e., you know that stuff where you shut down our ability to actually pull oil out of the ground in our own country when you came into office? Let's just roll that back for a little bit. And the government's like, no. Just make more oil. Just get us the more oil and make it cheaper now. Again, doesn't work. Unsurprisingly, it doesn't work. So the price of fuel is going through the roof in the US. I mean, everywhere. I was actually doing some maths on it. Interestingly, I saw that like prices are getting up near $7 a gallon US in parts of America. So in California, where it's notoriously more than the rest of the country, but it went over $5. So let's use that $5 US mark, okay, per gallon. A gallon is a little bit of crazy maths for you, for those of us who aren't still using a system that is based off fuck knows what, but a system that makes sense. So it's around about 3.8 liters per gallon. So if we divide that we come out with a number which was about $1.30 US per litre, which in Australian dollars is about $1.80 to about $1.83 Australian dollars per litre that they're paying, and they are flipping out. This is the highest it's been there. I don't know what your petrol is right now, but I just walked up the street before walking the dogs, and I looked, and mine was $2.30 a litre, $2.30 a litre for diesel. So we're 50 cents above what America is paying, and America's melting down at the moment. And I mean, Aussies, I've heard some people complaining about it and stuff like that, but a lot of people are just like, oh man, price of fuel, oh, keep filling up. Yeah, I think where this is going to start hitting, I don't know what the point is for Australia. If we're not freaking out now, then I don't know what our point is where we do start freaking out. Maybe we're just used to just taking this sort of stuff. Maybe it's the whole throwback to a penal colony thing where we're just like, you're telling us what to do again, and you're punishing us for stuff. Okay, all right. Anyway, I'm not advocating for pitchforks and torches or anything in the streets, but at some point, it's going to cost us too much, and we're going to have to start making some tough decisions. But it's not really just the end consumer that's a problem here, especially when we're talking about diesel prices. It is the truckers, as I keep talking about, and the farmers and the other manufacturers that need diesel to actually operate. Interestingly enough, I was talking about this yesterday. Part of this electricity crisis is that the electricity companies actually go to large individual companies that have nothing to do, that consume electricity, just companies, that when you've got quite a large setup, a large infrastructure, you actually have to build generators just in case. So there's a whole heap of companies out there in Australia, a whole heap of facilities out there in Australia who have diesel generators in order to run as backups. The electric company or the electric governing body comes in and says, hey, we need that electricity. This is what happened the other night. We need that electricity. So start pumping your power, kick your generator on and pump that power back into the grid, thanks. If those generators are fueled by diesel and diesel continues to increase in price, you can see where I'm going here, right? At some point, those companies are just going to go, no, like, not pay us more. Oh, we can't because the cap's at $300. So all this gives me a really not terrified feeling, but a really like awkward feeling. I'm like, oh, like, can no one see where this is heading? Or am I taking crazy pills here? All right, back over in the US and diesel prices. Louisiana shrimpers face record high diesel prices. Record high diesel prices and competition from cheap imported shrimp are hitting Louisiana shrimpers in the wallet, right in that wallet, and driving some of them out of business. This is the thing that concerns me, is when people are being driven out of business, because when they go out of business, this is the thing that concerns me, is when people are being driven out of business, because when they go out of business, it's not like tomorrow fuel prices go down and they go, oh yeah, we'll come back into business now. It's as easy as that. When businesses go out of business, they very rarely come back into it. And then if enough businesses go out of business, you lose a sector, you lose an entire industry in your country. You lose the ability to do it. Okay, and I know this example is US, it's not Australian or New Zealand, but this is something that could happen here in Australia. This is certainly something that could happen here in Australia. And this is concerning stuff for us. What are the flow-on effects from that? Well, it means that US at the moment is getting cheap imported for us. What are the flow-on effects from that? Well, it means that US at the moment is getting cheap imported shrimp. Chuck another shrimp on the barbie, mate. They're getting cheap imported shrimp. What's the problem with that? Have we had any issues with imports at the moment? Like, but why I put these sort of stories up there is just to try and illustrate as best as I can and continue slapping it into your face. is that the system we have been utilizing is not perfect, and it is actually quite fragile. And what we are seeing right now is the fragility of the systems that we have been using. So as much as possible, we need to go out and shrimp ourselves. We need to go out and get the shrimp to get on the barbie. We don't have shrimps, prawns, right? But I'm not saying grow your own prawns. I'm just saying we need to think about our own food systems all the way down to the individual, all the way down to you. How are you helping to sustain your own food right now? Take that step today. Take that 1%. More reports out of the US. I'll just quickly touch on this one. It's about farmers now also complaining about diesel prices. Obviously, tractors and things like this need it to operate. At some point, it's just not going to make sense, and that's what they're seeing. We've reached that point to where it is very close to being a sinking ship. This certain person named Kotsmoyer, a legislative affairs specialist for the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, testified to state lawmakers on Tuesday. We are teetering on the edge right now. Food may not be as available because of the fuel price surge. That's Putin's fuel price surge, right? Remember that. Yeah. So yeah, food may not be as available. This again is something that I want you to really think about. Food may not be as available. Right now, we still have food available. There are some things like, heads of lettuce that are $12 or something, but they're there. Okay. So, and there are things that are not there. If you're paying attention, there are a number of things that are not there anymore, and it's not getting talked about too much in Australia. For example, I don't know, maybe try and go out and buy berries. That could be difficult. But there's a number of things out there that are hard to get, but we still do have a lot of food on the shelves. And so one of my recommendations is right now, start to, increase your pantry at home. Make sure that you've got a few days, make sure then, sort of push towards a few weeks of food. And then if you want to go gold standard, go for months of food on hand in your own house. And then obviously grow your own stuff as well. Another US food processing plant erupts in flames. Surprise, surprise. What's going on there? Who knows? Okay, so there's this viral footage that's coming out from Kansas, allegedly of thousands of cattle dying in a very short space of time, like yesterday, pretty much. Reports are varying. The video appears to have hundreds. Some people are saying thousands. One of the official, it was just a viral video, but one of the official organizations within the cattle industry within Kansas came out and said, yes, we can guarantee at least 2,000 cattle have died, head of cattle have died overnight, saying it's to excessive heat. It's due to excessive heat that all of a sudden, boom, they've died. And some reports are up to 10,000 or tens of thousands of cattle in feedlots in Kansas have died within 24 hours. Pretty scary stuff. This is sort of stuff that I look at and I'm like, whoa, that's some Revelations shit there. But that tens of thousands of stuff is unverified, and I want to make sure that you know that that's unverified. Don't just look at these videos and go, "Whoa, world's ending." I mean, it's another thing in the food supply system that we're seeing is going wrong. Certainly, the video appears to have dead cattle in it, and the official organization has come out and said at least 2,000 have died, which is terrible. That's horrible. But as a counterpoint to this is an interesting point. There's been a flood of just comments, just the anecdotal comments of human beings who are like, wait, heat, hang on. It's hot. It's hot in Kansas. I get that. It was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, obviously, not Celsius. And That's hot, right? That's hot. Yet people in Texas are going, well, it's kind of routinely hotter than that on a lot of our feedlots, and we've never had a die off like that. A lot of other people were saying, yeah, I've lived and worked around cows my entire life, and I've never seen anything like that, apart from like disease, or if we've had to destroy a certain, load of cows or something like that. So that I just want to throw that into the mix as well. Like, it's my little conspiracy theory for the day. What the is going on there? Charlie Cause says, I've been vacuum packaging rice, etc., which helps it last years. Currently have around 9 months worth of food. Awesome. Thank you. That's the kind of stuff that I want to hear from people. I love hearing these sort of stories. I love hearing how people are out there and getting prepared. So good on you. You're getting my little gold star, Charlie Cause, this morning. Bing! That's great. I'd love to know how you are storing your rice too. Me personally, I use Mylar bags and I use O2 absorbers. So I put O2 absorbers, a couple, like there's a certain ratio that you should put in per thingo. I pack some little ones so that I can pull little bits of rice out at a time. And then I pack some big ones, like 10, 20 kilo Mylar bags. And then I put those into a plastic 44-gallon drum, which is sealed. And in that drum, in those packets, I'll actually throw a big O2 absorber, moisture absorber, like the kind that you put in a cupboard or something like that to keep your clothes non-moldy, that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'd love to know what you guys are doing. I also have a vacuum sealer, so I vacuum seal a lot of stuff as well when I do it. So depending on what the package is, some of the bigger Mylar, I can't really vacuum seal it. It's just not feasible to do that. The smaller ones I can. However, what I have found, I did some experimentation with this with the smaller ones. I packed it full of rice and I put more, like if it said put 1 O2 absorber in, I put 2 in. If it said put 2, I put 3 in, and I sealed it up and tried to pull out as much air as I could, sealed it up. Those O2 absorbers obviously pull in the oxygen, and it actually does not vacuum seal it, but it takes out a lot of that thing, and they kind of look vacuum sealed. So that's another interesting thing that you might want to try out with your food preps as well if you're doing that sort of stuff. Ozfarm Living, what temperature are they talking about? Yeah, so 100 degrees. So we're talking, I think that's about 38 degrees. 100 is about 38 degrees Celsius, up to around 40. I think 40 is 104 Fahrenheit off the top of my head. I don't really know what the scales are. But, in Australia, obviously, we've got huge amounts of cattle, and they're in parts of the country that are, they're all over the country, but they're in hot parts of the country. And we regularly, for large parts of the year, have long stretches of time over 40 degrees. So it's over 104 Fahrenheit, I think. So again, that maybe there were some other conditions in there that meant the cattle couldn't get cold. Maybe it was neglect, or maybe there was some sort of something they did wrong, but it's odd. It is odd. Eclipse Echidna, where any recommendations on vacuumable packaging? Like I said, I've got a vacuum sealer and just the normal rolls that you get with that. And I seal some stuff in that. Mylar bags, I also use. Mylar bags are great. And O2 absorbers. So let me think. I bought some O2 absorbers off eBay. My Mylar bags, and I think I got a bunch of O2 absorbers off. Jot this down, people. survivalsuppliesaustralia.com.au. Survival Supplies Australia. I'm getting a shipment from them today, and I'm super stoked. I have zero affiliation with these guys. They're from over in Perth. Everything that I've dealt with them, they've been spot on. They've been great. They've got everything that a Aussie prepper needs. There's a couple of things maybe they don't have that we just can't get in Australia, or are difficult to get in Australia. Pretty much everything else that they've got. So it doesn't matter what you want in the prepping sort of mindset, they'll pretty much have it there. And I've got a bunch of stuff through them. They've always delivered relatively quickly. Even when we were having supply chain issues from the east to the west, or the west to the east, they still got their stuff to me within a week, and I was blown away. So Survival Supplies Australia, look them up, buy stuff off them, tell them I sent you. Don't tell them, they don't know who I am, but all right. A little comment here on the YouTubes. I wasn't sure if YouTube was working this morning, but take the rides back on here. Inside the Carolinas, that's North and South Carolina, for those who are unfamiliar. It's not a person called Carolina. It's a couple of states. Inside the Carolinas, you got 2 shirts on. Send me some cool air, please. Last summer was so mild, so much rain. It's been hotter so far. I guess you're in winter in Australia. We're in the depths of winter, and I'm in a particularly cold part of Australia. Some of Australia doesn't get, well, most of Australia doesn't really get that cold. Once you get down south, you get a bit of colder weather. And if you get elevated a little bit, there's not a lot of elevation here in Australia, but where I am is a little bit elevated. So we get some cold weather here. Like we got 0, -2, -3 degrees Celsius the last 3-4 days here. So yeah, it's cold, and I wish I could send you guys some cool weather, because it sounds pretty hot over there. And you guys are in drought too. Not in the Carolinas, obviously. Over in the west side of your country, you have a lot of drought going on. So thinking about you guys, because drought is something that we are painfully aware of here in Australia. And yes, our summer here was pretty timid, actually, which in all honesty, I didn't complain too much about. We didn't have like a full-on Aussie summer this year, but after fighting the fires in 2019, 2020, that was a brutal summer. It was good to get a couple of years where summer was just it was in 4th gear, not 5th for once. But yeah, certainly cold over here at the moment. Right. So Kansas cow dying. World Food Program has forced to suspend food aid to 1.7 million people in South Sudan. Not good. You've heard me talk about this before if you've listened to me for any amount of time, especially when I'm talking about wheat and stuff coming out of Ukraine or not coming out of Ukraine and Russia. And where that lands is North Africa and then Sub-Saharan Africa as well. And I've said this quite a lot, that this food crisis that's happening, it's going to affect our prices. It's going to mean that we can't get all the brands of cereal that we like, and we can't get avocados and blueberries year round. Eventually, it might start really hitting us, but who it's going to hit in the here and now is Africa. And I'm talking about not them having increased prices. I'm talking about thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even millions of people potentially dying within the next 2 to 5 years. So just let that reality sink into you right now when you're complaining about petrol prices here and not being able to get your iceberg lettuce because it costs too much, that there are people who will be dying very soon because of what's happening in the world right now. 1.7 million people in South Sudan. What's the flow-on effect from that, though? Mass migration. We're going to see mass migration. Okay, it's going to be huge around the world, and it's going to increase in frequency. And where are people going to be heading? Places that are better suited to weather these sort of events, i.e. Australia, i.e. the US, i.e. New Zealand. I mean, those of us who hang around the Kiwi sphere and the Aussie Kiwi sphere, I mean, maybe not Australia. I think everyone in the world is starting to cotton on that Australia isn't the blissful paradise that we thought it was, that it's actually a little bit more like the penal colony where it came from. But still, I'm talking to people, I see people like put up comments and things like this. New Zealand, it's the best place to escape to. The apocalypse is coming, get to New Zealand. I don't know. Talk to some New Zealanders, all right? I love New Zealand. I would move there in a heartbeat. But right now, with the situation that we've had of the lockdowns for the last 2 years, the oppression that we've had for the last 2 years, the asinine restrictions we've had on people for arbitrary reasons for the past 2 years, it has really exemplified how Australia and New Zealand governance, I should say, Australian and New Zealand governance is certainly not what we thought it was. Not what a lot of people thought it was. It's probably what I thought it was all along. Take the ride. It's over 40 degrees Celsius today. Yeah, that's hot. In Australia, we like 40 degrees in summer. That's pretty stock standard. Not stock standard, but like we'll get stretches. Even I grew up in Melbourne, which is all the way down south, known for its kind of cold, shitty weather. Think maybe like Portland. Maybe Portland would be a good analogy weather-wise for Melbourne. But even then, like you would have a stretch of at least 1 to 2.5 weeks where consistently every day was over 40 degrees in Melbourne. Like the summers are bloody hot here. So yeah, I'm feeling for you. And I would imagine Carolina might have, you probably got a greener, wetter area there. So the humidity there is probably quite a bit more. I don't deal well with humidity. Take the ride again. How do you heat your place there? I use propane here. Next year, I'll be buying a wood-burning stove, but I can't burn it while I'm at work with animals in the cabin. I'm totally wood-fired here. I've got like a little one of those gas foil heaters that I use to heat individual rooms, or this room here because it's far away from where the heater is in the lounge room. But this particular place here, it uses a wood-burning heater, which, you know, brings its own fun hassles with it that I have to consistently source wood throughout winter. And hopefully in the future, if the government, my local government, ever pulls its finger out of its butthole and actually clears its DA system and I get my building approval through, then I'll be building a house which is solar passive, and the only other heater that will be in it is a wood-fired heater. And I've obviously got access to land. I've got friends' land around here. I live in a pretty rural area, but the place where I used to live is out on, so the land that I access, my kind of bug out location, is 100 acres of wooded land. And I can go out there and I can chainsaw and axe and split wood until my heart is content, until I can't lift my noodle arms anymore. So plenty of wood. I've got lots of wood as a resource. Yeah. So, and that's the way I'm shifting. I'm heading away from using electricity, heading away from using gas. I don't want all the extrinsic inputs. Try and get out of that. Take the ride. And of course, governments are trying to usher people into cities, which is not a good thing. No, I just spent a week and a bit up in a city working. I got to admit this. All right, it's not a great thing to admit, but every time I go up there, I look around, I see what's happening, I talk to people, I get the vibe of what they're thinking, and I see how few people are prepared and how many people are actually, or I wouldn't call it anti-prepared. They are like consciously ignoring all the bad things in the world, and they're focusing on just distraction of themselves and life as usual there. Every time I go up there, I just sort of think like, oh man, there's so many things in the world that I'm like, oh man, this is terrible, this is terrible. And then I get this little sliver, and I don't like to admit this, but this little sliver comes up and it says, yeah, we deserve this. What's about to happen? We've got it coming. Just looking at all this, we've got it coming. Sorry, but not sorry. That's cities. If you're living in a city right now, my only recommendation to you is to get out. Get out now. Start doing the steps to get out. Oz Farm Living, our next purchase will be a wood oven / stove. Good. I've been looking for, I lived in a house for a little bit that had one of those old school, like they're very European English cottage sort of things where you start a little fire in one area and it heats an oven and another oven, and you can actually get ones with smokers, and you can get ones with water tanks on the back, so you can get heating of the house, cooking, and hot water all in one. They're pretty cool, nifty things, but they cost a freaking packet. Eclipse Echidna, 100% of people are distracting themselves. Cancel your Netflix and use the money to buy food and prepare. Hannah, 100% agree. I can't wait to get out. Yeah, that's the spirit. Charlie Cause, Aga, I think maybe agree. Is that what you're trying to say? Take the ride. That's another thing. If you got wood, you can heat water for cooking and bathing. I live in a forest of wood. Yes. That's another thing to look for if you think about moving. Yeah. I mean, you can move to a rural location in Australia quite easily, and there is not a tree in sight. Like there is not a tree to the horizon. Not a tree to the horizon. So you got to think about that. Bend over. I'm about 50 k's from Melbourne. Is this too close? I mean, it really depends. Melbourne is a relatively green city. I grew up in a part of Melbourne that I call Melbourne. It's the outer eastern suburbs, a little town called Ferntree Gully. But I grew up there, and that was quite wooded area. It's a temperate rainforest, in fact. So a lot of access to a lot of wilderness areas, a lot of natural resources, and it's pretty easy to kind of then scoot off and be surrounded by nothing but trees. I lived at the base of the Dandenong Ranges, and if you've ever been to the Dandenong Ranges, have a look at it now on your computer machine. Huge big trees, like giant big trees. I mean, we're not talking west coast of the US big trees, but like as far as Australia goes, they're pretty big trees. So yeah, I mean, there are parts of Melbourne that are really quite green. There are parts of Melbourne that you can kind of scoot out very quickly. But Melbourne is sprawling, and it is eating the surroundings. That's the way I see it now. It's like Melbourne was a contained sort of city that had a lot of suburbs around it, and now the city is like eating the suburbs, and the suburbs are pushing out and eating the wilderness out there. If you don't believe me, like Berwick was like a backwater, like some dinky little place that you drove past when you're on your way to Phillip Island. That's a freaking city now. That place, it's huge. So yeah, you need to make the decision how close you are to the city. It's your comfort level, how close you are. But I have said this before, and I'll say it again. In any sort of disaster, there is always whatever the disaster is, and then the human fallout or the human effect after the disaster. Even if the original disaster was caused by a human, let's say. Manchester bombing. Okay, so there was a concert on, and a bomb went off in a stadium that was caused by a human, and that's a disaster. That's an emergency. What happened then after? Humans freaked out, started running, and they stampeded and trampled people. So you've got the effect that happens. You've got Hurricane Katrina smashing into the New Orleans and causing all this destruction and flooding and problems. And then you've got days and weeks and even months afterwards of horrific human behavior falling out. So humans are a threat. I'm not saying all humans are a threat, and they're not a threat all the time, but under the right circumstances, human beings are threats to us. So if we kind of logically extrapolate that out, more humans in a shorter area, so less resources, more humans, are more of a threat. So you figure out how close you want to be to a city. Me, I don't want to be anywhere near a city. But that's just me. All right. Apparently those, I put a little story or reel or something up recently, and it was about Chicago. And it had the tornado sirens going. It's just a little reminder to everyone that, like, we often think that these big weather events kind of happen, and tornadoes and things like that happen in certain areas, in these small towns and things like that. Again, on cities, we're just talking about cities, but cities get hit by things hard sometimes. I just talked about New Orleans getting smashed. So cities get hit by catastrophic events, or at least just emergency events. So those severe storms that have smashed into all parts of the Chicago area. But this actually, the severe storm left over 40,000 residents without power. So again, just another reminder, that we might want to try and secure our own power situation, be that solar or backup generators or whatever it is. Me personally, I have a relatively large petrol generator as a backup. I've got several different solar options. So I've got sort of static setup solar batteries that are connected to solar panels with an inverter on it. And then I've got a portable solar generator, or what is essentially a big solar bank. So think about this. Think about this in your life. How reliant are you in power? What would you do if you didn't have power for a day? What would you do if you didn't have power for a week? Look around at all the stuff in your house that's powered right now and all the things that you probably need. So have a think about that. All right. That is it. That's the last one I've got for today. So we'll wrap it up there. Yeah, lots of stuff obviously going on in the world in that strategic level sort of side of things. Like I said, there's a whole heap of conflicts that are brewing and kicking off and increasing in intensity at the moment. And it's worthwhile for us to keep our eyes on, not from the perspective of freaking out and being like, oh God, we're all going to die, but just from the perspective of we need to understand what's happening in the world and the bigger effects that this is going to have, i.e. if something does happen in the Korean Peninsula, if something does happen in the Middle East, if something does happen in Turkey and Greece, if something does happen in and around Taiwan Strait, then we need to think about that on how it's going to affect our lives, because it will have pretty dramatic effect. I can guarantee that. Take the ride. I love these sorts of comments. People will start killing each other within a week for water, food, and medicine. Do you realize how many diabetics there are alone? The further you can get away from large numbers of humans, the better. And I can't agree with that more. In fact, I'll give you another little book recommendation. I was recommending a whole heap of books at the start today, but I'll give you one last one, which is, I did talk about it yesterday, but it talks about exactly this kind of scenario. It's called 1 Second After. I think I said yesterday I'm going to find out the author, and I never did. All right. Bear with me. It is about what happens if a EMP pulse went off over the continental USA, and what would actually happen. And it actually, like, it's a novel, so it's fiction, a work of fiction, obviously, but it really quite smartly plays out what would really happen. Because you've got things like this, like diabetics, and one of the characters in the book is a diabetic. Here we are. The author is William R. Forstchen, spelled Forstchen. Forstchen. William R. Forstchen. 1 Second After, 2009 novel. Highly recommend it. Get on it. Have a read of that, because that's going to really start to get you thinking about what would happen in a big emergency. Not that I'm saying a big emergency is going to happen, but if I was a betting man, I would say we're kind of heading towards something pretty big right now. So best prepare yourselves right now. Thank you very much for joining me again. I really appreciate everyone jumping in. I really appreciate your comments, and people let me know about their preps as well. So that was really cool. Love that. If you've got any questions about today, let me know. I'll try and do a little post on those books that I put up at the start, so you can check those out. Apart from that, gang, so MI, hey mate, keep doing these vids. We need more updates. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate anyone giving me comments like that, because I'm happy to do these videos. I am kind of staring at this stuff, and I know it's not for everyone. And I actually wouldn't recommend it to most people to go out and look at things like news sources and trying to extrapolate out what might happen. But this is my life. This is what I do for a job. I'm a security consultant. I need to think about what the worst case scenario is quite often. So I'm quite often looking at the worst possible parts of the world. What are the worst human beings doing in the worst scenarios? It's not super healthy to do. And unless you've built up some amount of resilience against it, then I wouldn't really recommend that you go out and do it. But I'm happy to do this sort of stuff and talk about these sort of things. And I'm really appreciative of you listening to it too. So thank you very much. Thank you for those comments. Anyway, if you've got any other questions, send them through to me. Apart from that, keep prepping, keep building up those stores, keep getting out there. I'm going to get out in the garden because I've got to dig up these damn potatoes that the frost wiped out. So that's what I'll be doing today, amongst other things. But apart from that, gang, Semper Paratus.